In the recent decades, Asia has been a hotbed of aviation developments, especially for the budget airlines. Among the most notable names are the AirAsia Group from Malaysia and Indonesia's Lion Air Group. Then you have other locally based low-cost airlines who have become some of the most prominent airlines within their countries. With the success of Asian budget carriers along with the growth of Asian aviation overall, it has attracted some outside players to establish more of a presence in their region. One of those players that has become a major part of Asia's aviation industry is the Australian budget brand Jetstar. This video will tell the story of how the Australian-based budget brand under the Qantas Group established its presence beyond Australia in key markets within Asia. In its early foundings, Jetstar was actually a response to the Virgin Group's entry into the Australian market, which at that time it was named Virgin Blue, which took off in August of 2000. With newfound competition in the early 2000s for Qantas's domestic share, Qantas would transform its QantasLink subsidiary acquired from the purchase of Impulse Airways in 2001 to become a budget airline to compete with Virgin Blue. Qantas would rebrand QantasLink to Jetstar in 2003, and a year later in 2004 it operated its first domestic flights. Based in Melbourne, Australia, Jetstar has grown to become an integral part of Qantas Group's two-airline strategy, with the premium full-service market served by Qantas while Jetstar would handle the low-cost budget market. With its first hub at Melbourne, it has grown to have another hub at Sydney, along with other secondary hubs in Australia and New Zealand. The airline group operates over 100 aircraft, mostly Airbus A320s, to go along with the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliners for the long-haul flights. Since its founding by Qantas, the Australian airline has used Jetstar to establish its presence in other markets in Asia. While Asia's aviation market is one of the most lucrative and fast-growing, the biggest hurdle has been the foreign ownership laws in most Asian countries. While foreign companies could start their businesses in their respective countries, usually the foreign business like Qantas and Jetstar are forbidden from owning more than 50%. To get around this, they have partnered with local firms, including some of Asia's major airlines, to launch their presences in select countries within the last 2 decades. Something all too familiar with the budget brands in Asia like AirAsia and Lion Air have done in Malaysia and other parts of Asia when forming their individual subsidiaries. With that said, Jetstar would set up its first Asian subsidiary in Singapore with the foundation of Jetstar Asia. Qantas' stake would be a 49% stake, and joining along with them would be some Singapore-based businessmen, along with Singapore's government investment company Temasek Holdings, which had a 19% stake during its founding. There isn't any domestic points for Singapore, so the first major route was an international route to Hong Kong, and later the new venture Jetstar Asia would set up more routes to other parts of the region. However, after a good start, it ran into problems with the regulatory officials for approvals to launch flights to China and Indonesia, and the airline was experiencing the problem of a cash burn and investors struggling to finance the airline. Still looking forward, the airline would eventually merge with the Singapore-based budget brand Value Air, one of the first mergers of any budget airlines within Southeast Asia. This move would benefit the airline group with the later acquisition of Value Air's Indonesian routes in 2004 when the Value Air brand was dissolved. Since its founding, Jetstar Asia turned around its financial situation and operates a fleet of 18 Airbus A320s to mostly regional flights within 4 to 5 hours. Following Singapore, Jetstar's next move would be in Vietnam. Around the same time that Jetstar Asia was taking off, the Jetstar Group saw an opportunity to get a stake in the Vietnamese aviation industry with the acquisition of a 18% stake in Pacific Airlines in 2007. At the time, Pacific Airlines was backed by the Vietnamese government and was facing some financial problems, and the hope was to turn around the airline. Later, Jetstar would increase its stake, and eventually the airline would be rebranded as Jetstar Pacific in what was to become Vietnam's first budget airline. Since its founding, it hasn't always been easy, as the airline has not been able to become financially stable, something I will discuss later in the video. Like Jetstar Asia in Singapore, Jetstar Pacific would operate a fleet of 17 Airbus A320s to mostly domestic destinations. Jetstar would focus its Asian expansion with the Singapore and Vietnam ventures, and it wasn't until 4 years later after the founding of Jetstar Pacific that Jetstar would take on a new venture. This upcoming third venture would be based in Japan. Qantas would team up with Japan Airlines, its oneworld partner based in Japan, to form Jetstar Japan in 2011. Qantas and Japan Airlines would hold the majority of 33% stake each, and the new airline venture would be based at Tokyo Narita, which was undergoing the transformation along with Haneda under the plan for the dual airport system for the city of Tokyo. Jetstar Japan would make its first flight from Tokyo Narita to Fukuoka in 2012, which would be soon followed with the expansion to other destinations including Naha, Osaka Kansai, and Sapporo. As more flights and routes would be added, Jetstar Japan would set up more hubs in Osaka Kansai and Nagoya's Chubu Central Air Airport. Later, the airline would operate its first international flights from Osaka to Hong Kong, and international flights from Tokyo to Hong Kong would follow a year later. It currently has a fleet of 25 Airbus A320s, the largest of the Jetstar subsidiaries, and operates domestic routes along with international flights to cities in China, Hong Kong, the Philippines, and Taiwan. While it has succeeded in finding and starting local partnerships, Jetstar's experience in Asia so far hasn't really been all that smooth. It previously had ambitions to start another airline in Hong Kong together with China Eastern, each holding a 33% stake in 2012. However, when applying for the license, oneworld partner airline Cathay Pacific opposed the move along with the other airlines based in Hong Kong, over concerns of the airline being a foreign entity operating in the city. With the airline failing to secure its license, the venture was later dissolved in 2015. The other major failure for the Jetstar group in Asia was in Vietnam with the Jetstar Pacific venture, which, as mentioned before, it has been facing financial struggles, even with the involvement of Qantas. With its future looking so bleak earlier this year, Qantas sold its stake in Jetstar Pacific to Vietnam Airlines, ending its Vietnam-based venture. While it was an alluring opportunity, Vietnam has proven to be a highly competitive market, especially with the aggressive budget airlines like Vietjet taking a hold in the Vietnamese aviation industry. And in some way, Jetstar had a lack of local knowledge that they should have had to compete, as it seemed to run on its own compared to the other subsidiaries. Even with its failures, Jetstar still has succeeded in Asia in some way, especially with the ventures in Singapore and Japan. Jetstar Asia and Jetstar Japan has taken advantage of partnerships such as Qantas and Japan Airlines for transfers and connections at the hubs of Tokyo Narita and Singapore. Like the competing budget airline groups, it offers a uniform experience of what you get in Japan or Singapore, similar to what you will see in the Jetstar services of Australia. One of the biggest examples of this could be seen in the booking process, where travelers could go to the main Jetstar website and book travel for the Jetstar network. Another interesting note that the airline also does have interline agreements with some airlines, something you normally don't see with other budget airlines. While its base is Australia, Jetstar has been a crucial piece of the Qantas Group's turnaround within the last decade. Something all too familiar with the current CEO of the Qantas Group, Alan Joyce, who interestingly enough also happens to be the founding head of the Jetstar Group. Given the current market climate and the abundance of budget airlines throughout Asia, it's likely that they will probably not form any new ventures soon, but instead to focus on its markets in Singapore and Japan. I definitely hope you enjoyed this video about the experience of the Australian brand Jetstar and its part in the aviation and travel scene in the Asia Pacific. This video is part of a series of the Asia's Airlines, which I take a look at the other major airline groups in the region. To learn more about the histories of the airlines in Asia, I'll link the Asia's Airlines series playlist in the comment section below. In the meantime, I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Once again, thank you for watching and have a great day.